How's it going, folks? Good evening. that was like mass, actually. I didn't mean that. You're all very welcome to the 42.e Rugby Show live here at Eastside Tavern, brought to you in association with our sponsors, Bank of Ireland and the Irish Heart Foundation. It's great to see you all, even the guy who I just met coming out of the women's jacks, who didn't seem to realise what he had done. It's great to have you all here. As I mentioned, we are giving away a Leinster Rugby jersey later on in the show, so think of questions. We'll be getting questions at the end of the first half, questions at the end of the second half, and we're going to get our very special guest to pick the best one, and the winner will go home with that jersey. That jersey is, of course, brought to us also by Bank of Ireland. Yeah, it's pretty much time to kick off. It's Champions Cup semi-final weekend, and I think it's time to get our guests up here. Who is the first one? He is the riding pride of County Waterford, Ireland. It is the 42.e zone, Murray Kinsella. Story Muzza.
How are you, Gav?
I promised there'd be no porn references in your intro this week.
He's done some really weird intros for the last few weeks, so I'm happy with that.
They have been weird. I'll give you that. Look, our main guest this evening, I'm sorry to say main again, he needs no real introduction. A great Irish sports person once said that, what did he say? Knowledge is knowing that tomato is not a fruit. Yeah. But this guest tonight would probably tell you that wisdom is knowing that you can't unring a bell. It is the former Ireland head coach, Mr. Eddie O'Sullivan. How are things, Eddie?
Ding.
That's it. Are you keeping well, lads?
Yeah, very good. Excited.
Yep. You're reunited. It's been a long time since you sat alongside each other for a 42.e show.
Missed them really badly.
I have missed Eddie, yeah. Before the Leinster, was it?
Yeah, especially when we couldn't reach out on the internet and stuff. I was very upset.
Yeah, good to have him back.
I was a poor substitute. Like the first time I met you to do a show, it was kind of where's Murray? Are you familiar with the term Eddieisms?
Not really, no. Why?
Well, like you do have a turn of phrase that that us journalists, for example, would aspire to achieve. Like some of your famous lines, you can't unring a bell being one.
Yeah.
There's a couple here. You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube.
It's true. Yeah.
It is true. Yeah, you can't deny that. You can't deny the logic.
It's a messy process.
About as useful as a trapdoor in a canoe.
That's an old one. I don't know on that one. I heard that one years ago.
A couple of you once compared France to the full bag of chips, is what you call them. Australia being a different bag of hammers to New Zealand. One of my favourites is your own version of game, set and match, which was thanks for the use of the hall. Game over.
It's kind of a rural thing because you're always borrowing the local hall for something, and you always say when you're leaving thanks for the use of the hall, but it's at the end of the night, so it's over when you say thanks for the use of the hall.
One last one, and I promise the banter is over then, right? Can you remember? It was actually a story in Paul O'Connell's book, and I wondered, can you remember telling the Irish pack at one stage that Peter Stringer may as well be looking for a Mars bar in a bucket of shit?
Yeah, I was quite animated that day.
What was the context to it?
The ball presentation at the Ruck was shocking. Like he would need a shovel to get it out, and it was like just they were going down with it, and the ball wasn't presented, and he was rooting, and when I see the scrum half rooting, and his foot's in there, and I said like this is it, like he can't. They're not going to get the ball there, so I said a better chance of finding a Mars bar and a bucket of shit. I think it resonated with them, that the ball presentation improved. There's no Mars bars or anything involved, but that was it, But I think when you're coaching, what you're trying to do is get a message across, and sometimes some phrase like can really resonate with guys. They remember it at a key moment. I remember another one, and sometimes you say it and guys start laughing, but I remember we were down in Tonga once. We were playing against Tonga on a Saturday, and the whole strategy down there was we had to have a really good kicking game because we kicked the ball loosely, they'd counter-attack, and Christ, it'd be a nightmare, trying to pin them down. And I remember we were working out of our half, doing our exits, and like the boys were running with the ball, and which was like, this is not what we planned. So well, it's better to find out today than on Saturday. So I stopped everything and I said, like, stop, just see the corner down there on the pitch. And I'm going, yeah. I said, well, you could napalm that corner and you wouldn't singe the full back shorts. And because you guys, wheels turning, but it was true. There was so much space in the backfield that you could detonate, napalm, and you wouldn't hurt anyone. And that's the whole point. That's the space we want to get to. And I think things like that resonate with guys under pressure if you can get a message across. But that's how it is. Sometimes I don't go out and say, like, sit down like before and say, no, how can I don't do that. It just comes to me for some reason.
Improv.
Well,
it's an interesting point, because I suppose if you are saying something like that to players and they're trying to figure it out in their head, they are by default then taking it on board.
Exactly.
Whereas if you just use a cliche,
it's the whole point. Now sometimes if it's funny and they start laughing, you think, geez, they think it's funny, they miss the point. So it's not supposed to be funny, but sometimes it come across like that.
Yeah, that's the key for coaching, isn't it? It's getting a big message into a small little message that a player can easily digest.
Well, it's the old thing at half time, you've got like 5 messages to give, and you've got 7, but you can only give 5, maybe 4, maybe 3, and then you make the mistake of starting with the most important one, which you should probably start with the least important one, because the last one to hear is the least important one if you start with the most important one, and then that's the one they remember that was least important as they're leaving the changing room. So you kind of reverse the whole thing and start with the stuff that's not that important to begin with, and then get to the really important stuff. Like making tackles and things like that.
Start with the trapdoor in the canoe. Finish with the
yeah. Move on then, to the rubber barge pole or whatever.
Yeah, you can't tackle a sandwich was another one you were saying just beforehand there.
He couldn't tackle a chicken sandwich.
He wouldn't tackle a chicken sandwich. Yeah. Somebody who was kind of shy in contact wouldn't tackle a chicken sandwich.
How do you think we're fixed? Both provinces going in this weekend. Like statistically, it's probably against an All-Ireland final that everybody here, I'm sure, would dream of. I think it's 3 times.
It's funny. I was looking at that possibility, and you step back from the emotion of it and what we'd all like. I think there's a downside to an Irish final as well, by the way, which is bigger picture, but that's another discussion. If you look at the records in Europe, like Leinster played 157, won 104, 68% success, 3-time champions. Munster played 165, won 114, 70% success, 2-time champions. So like on the stats, Scarlets are 48%, never won it. Racing 48%, never won it. So if you're looking at that, you say the 2 Irish teams are the most experienced, the most successful, the most equipped to deal with these situations.
Yeah, well, Munster have lost their last 5 semi-finals, haven't they? They don't have a good recent record when they get to this stage. So, and I think last season is such a good relevant point for us to touch on. Like, there was failings in those 2 semi-finals that they hope they've moved beyond and progressed over the course of this last year. I probably think they have done that. So, definitely lots of reason for optimism historically as well.
Possibly the team that are, I think Leinster are slightly more at risk than Munster actually of losing. Now that seems like a pretty serious thing to claim when you see the calibre of team that Leinster can put out, and we can talk about that, but I just think that the Scarlets team are probably the most dangerous opposition at the moment, particularly coming to Dublin. They're not the least bit phased by coming to Dublin. They're quite happy to come here. They're quite happy to be the underdogs, and they'll fancy their chances of upsetting the apple cart. Whereas I think the Munster thing is exactly what Munster want to be. They're going down to France. They're the underdogs. Racing are not at home. Like, whatever they do, Bordeaux is still going to be Munster's home game.
Yeah.
There's going to be enough of red shirts there on Saturday or Sunday. It won't make any difference. And I think that's the problem for me in that one, is I think Leinster may be slightly more at risk than Munster.
Yeah, like Scarlets are the team you probably wanted to avoid, but I think Leinster are probably in a better place to deal with the threats they have. Like even this week, Stuart Lancaster's talking about they probably didn't kick out of their half enough in that Pro 12 semi-final last year, and they got punished. Those 3 first half tries, they're already so far behind, they're chasing the game. I think now they probably have a more like complete style of play. They can kick more, they can use their maul, their scrum. They're not just reliant on that attack, which was so impressive last year and has also been impressive again this year. But I just think they have more tools to actually pick the Scarlets apart, and having learned the lesson of being stung by them last year.
I'd agree with that on the basis that if you watch Leinster's performances throughout the season, I thought, to me, their best performances in terms of getting an outcome was their back-to-backs against Exeter.
Yeah,
now, Exeter, to me, are a fantastic team. I think Baxter is probably one of the best coaches in England. And it's interesting that Exeter, their success is not built around heroes or household names. It's built around this culture that Baxter has built, and it's a relentless kind of ambition to play well every Saturday, and it's ruthlessly efficient. It's incredibly physical, and they're a very difficult team to beat. They're top of the Premiership again this year, and Leinster went over there and beat Exeter, playing like Exeter. Like the two scores, one was after 35 phases, another was after 28 phases of just relentless one-off pick and drive carries, and they just beat Exeter doing what Exeter do well. And then you think, well, okay, they caught them on the hop and they come back to Dublin. Exeter are going to really make a statement. And that game to me was like, if you remember, Exeter scored a try just before half time, and I think someone got stuck in the bin. I can't remember who got stuck in the bin.
Keane was binned in the...
It might have been. He got binned anyway. Yeah. But the long story short was that Ison Isaiah, he was under the post during that conversion, and he was just barking at the team.
Yeah. And
they went upfield, and he kicked 2 penalties at half time and basically wrote off the yellow card. And they went on and won the second half. Now, what Leinster have at the moment is they're able to play different ways as required. They just have the players, they have the composure, they have the tools to beat almost any team, and they are the best team in Europe at the moment. And I don't think anyone would dispute that, but it's an 80-minute rugby game, and that's where the Scarlets come into it. They're a very efficient team as well.
It's a threat. That grid is so important though, and I think especially the younger guys now have progressed so much in the space of a year. Like you think back to that Clermont semi-final, and Dan Levy who got pinged at the edge of that ruck. Remember they went into the field, brilliant try, looked to take control of the match, but he just got done for maybe a kind of naive penalty, whereas now, you know, he's dominating Saracens in a semi-final, or a quarter-final rather. I feel all those guys are so far on this year, as well as that leadership that they have in the group. I'd be confident for them, even with the threat of Scarlets.
But that brings a huge amount of pressure now, Murray, you know. Like, no one's going to say Scarlets are favourites. Like, you're talking about, I'm saying they're the best team in Europe, and no one's going to say that's nonsense. They are.
Well, Wayne Pivac, the coach, put it that he doesn't think the Aviva Stadium is going to be a cauldron, and he made the point that one Scarlets fan is worth 10 Leinster fans, that he doesn't think they're going to be daunted by the atmosphere. We've got maybe 7 Scarlets fans worth of Leinster fans here then by that definition, but that they won't be frightened by the prospect. And obviously having had great success there in the Pro 14 towards the end of last season, like they're not, you made the point that, say, for example, Munster going down to Bordeaux, it might be a home game for Munster. I'm not saying it's going to be a home game for Scarlets, but it might necessarily be.
I agree with you, they won't be phased at all. But, and I think that's the problem, is, if there is a problem, is that there's some people probably thinking about Leinster in terms of getting to the final. Like, it's just about, will they win the trophy? There's a danger with that, even though you know this is really important, a lot of chips on the table. Like, you can still get caught by a team like Scarlets, and they're well able to do it, and they won't be phased coming to Dublin. So that's what worries me a little bit, Leinster. People are thinking, they're not saying it, they're thinking in terms of winning Europe this year, because all the indicators are they can.
Yeah, the message out of the Leinster camp is that they've learned from that mindset, from possibly thinking ahead to finals last season, and that they're a lot more focused.
And we shall see, because if they were to lose on the weekend, where would that leave them?
Yeah,
there would be a lot of navel gazing as to how did this go wrong, because all the indicators are they have the players, they have the momentum, they've been tried and tested all year. What could go wrong? Well, Scarlets could go wrong, and that's the problem.
Well, if you were to compare the teams in their current iterations to the teams that squared off in the Pro 14, say last year, semi-final, you kind of alluded to how Leinster have come on in that they're more versatile, even mentally maybe they're probably stronger. But what about the Scarlets then? Like, how do you view them in comparison to the team that won the Pro 14 last year? Are they roughly the same, or have they come on as well? I
think they've got more into their stride as a team in terms of playing the game they want to play, which is a dangerous game. It's a running game. But they have probably having a strong team in a sense. I think the injury in the centre to Jonathan Davies is a big loss. Like, he was a huge cog in their wheel, but they seem to have managed without him. So I suppose they're probably maybe not as strong on paper, but they might be stronger in terms of their understanding of what PVEC wants them to do, and the fact it's been successful, they're more comfortable in their skin doing it. And it's a pretty potent attack. You know, they're patient, and the one thing I say about the Welsh players in general, if you look at Welsh rugby, the basic skill set of Welsh players is extraordinarily high, and it's a bit like we have it here in hurling. You know, if you go to a stronghold of hurling, there's kids 12, 15, 16 years of age have phenomenal hurling skills. It's a bit like that in Wales. They just have the basic skills of the game. So if you watched Like I thought even the Six Nations this year, watching Wales playing, their capacity, because it was evident they changed their game. They moved away from worn ball to more an expansive game, which they kind of had to. I think their execution of that was very, very good. You know, they scored 3 tries against Ireland. Should have had a 4th, except for the interception at the end by Stockdale, which would have changed our season. But they have that innate skill set, and they're very comfortable in that. So if they get into their stride on Saturday and, like, Leinster slip up defensively, they will get punished. They only have to slip up 2 or 3 times, and that could be a game changer.
Yeah, well, one of the points made by Scarlets legend Mark Jones, who's obviously a Welsh international, he was saying today that if Leinster were to kind of go toe-to-toe with Scarlets and play their almost Leinster's brand now, but also Scarlets' brand, they are probably similar, that they could come unstuck. Whereas he reckons for Leinster to beat Scarlets, they have the capacity to put it up the jumper and just keep it far tighter. Like, which approach do you think Leinster should do, or are they now versatile to the point that they can almost do a little bit of both and mix it up?
I don't think they should do one or the other. I think they can do both. But the key is going to be is that for Leinster to control the tempo of the game. It's about the tempo of the game. If the game gets loose and the Scarlets have the ball in their hands, then there are problems. So when they have the ball, they need to control the tempo of the game, and so they need to control field position. And can they? Of course they can. They have the best fly half in the world to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, they will control field position. They have a good pack of forwards. They have a good set piece. They can do that. But I don't think they have to play that way the whole way. I mean, we know Leinster can play with the ball in hand as good as anybody else. So it's knowing when to pull the trigger on that. And again, you know, Sexton would have that experience to do that.
Yeah, I think there's a bit of uneasiness around Luke McGrath. Clearly, in the last game as well, he was struggling with the knee. Again, this week, we're still uncertain if he's going to feature. So that's a big one for them, especially because it changes how things shape up in the wing as well.
I don't think he'll play.
Yeah,
I mean,
it looks
when a coach says he's 50-50, that's the code word for he's not going to play.
It looks unlikely, and that means Jamison Gibson-Park starts at 9, who he's talked up this week, who's maybe struggling for a bit of form. It means James Lowe has gone on the left wing, and Barry Daly, one of those guys, comes in.
You can hear the tuts.
Yeah. Well, this is an
what
what-if scenario.
The whole Gibson-Park thing for me was kind of strange. That press conference, I wasn't at it obviously, but I was reading the quotes and I was thinking, geez, it was almost like they were trying too hard to sell him.
Yeah.
Like, as a player, now my thought would have been, well, you know, Luke McGrath, a great player, he's injured, but Gibson Park's coming in, no problem. But they almost, like, listen to Lancaster, was talking him up too much, like that they were worried about him, which I thought was strange.
Yeah.
You know, they almost oversold him. I mean, I think he's a very good player. I think he'll be fine.
Yeah, I think
but they seem more worried about him than me.
Yeah. He's coming off the back.
That's the bit I didn't get, you know.
Coming off the back of probably not his strongest performance, but he hasn't really been in that first choice team a lot. And when he has been off the bench, he's looked really good.
Yeah, he's smart. He's a smart halfback. I mean, he's not a Conor Murray. He's not even a Luke McGrath, but they don't need a Conor Murray, Luke McGrath. You know, they just need a guy who will do his job, and he's well able to do that. So I just got a bit unnerved by the fact that they were more kind of nervous about it than I was. You know,
it points to the importance of Luke McGrath, though. He's been absolutely brilliant in the Champions Cup. You know, his assists, he's scoring tries, really good defensively. We'll see it in a while how important he is in the backfield and things like that. But it does change things up for them. There's also going to be they're going to miss Sean O'Brien as well. He's out of it now. He's set for surgery on Friday on his shoulder, so that's a bit of a blow. I know he didn't feature the last day, and he's struggled all season with injuries.
The big trade up with Gibson Park is that effectively Lowe won't be on the field.
Yeah, so Fardy starts. I think they'll stick with the same.
Fardy has to start because I think he's a good line-out technician. Is more height across the line. They could probably put pressure on the Scarlets line-out with Fardy in the back five. So the question is then is, like, obviously Lowe doesn't get on the field. Who, let's be honest, he's been. I'd be up front and say that I was against him signing for Leinster on the basis that another young Leinster winger was going to lose out. But that doesn't take away from the fact that he's a fantastic player.
Yeah, he's been excellent,
and he's delivered really well for them, and he's been good energy around the team. Just watching him play, he's very upbeat, and the word coming out of Leinster is that he's a positive guy around the squad. So him not to be on the field now, because of like just shuffling things around, I think that's a bit of a setback.
Yeah, you're
Jack Conan coming back onto the bench probably as well.
Jack Conan is back training, so he'll be coming in onto the bench, it looks like. And I don't know, it is a big decision then on the wing. They've got a couple of options there, obviously. Barry Daly's had really good form and he's played in the Champions Cup before as well.
Well, we assuming that Robbie Henshaw's going to start?
Yeah, that's a tricky one as well, because Nathewa's been good at 12 as well. He's back training with Henshaw, and the fact that he warmed up with them last weekend before the Benetton match would probably indicate that they're going to bring him back into the fold. They wanted to get him back up to match speed through that means. Obviously he didn't play, but he's such a vital presence, so physical, and always delivers in the biggest games. Historically he doesn't need a huge run in either. He's come off injuries before and done well without a major build-up. But if they do start Henshaw, they'll probably, I think, put Lucy on the wing. Yeah, I mean, he showed his pace for that Gary Ringrose try early on. Well,
to be fair, Lucy is one of these guys can play across the line. He could probably stick him in a scrum half and he wouldn't be out of place if he had to. You know, he's. I mean, O'Driscoll has said on numerous occasions he's one of the best players he's ever played with. Full stop, which is a hell of a compliment to get. And I think, going back to that Exeter game, I thought that day when they were under the pump after Exeter scored, he was the guy that I thought rallied the troops, and he kicked the penalties that day. You know, I thought he was outstanding. I mean, not just as a player, but his whole leadership on the field.
He has a kind of an aura about him, I think.
Yeah, well, he showed you respected, but I just watched him, like when they were taking the conversion. You know, who needs to see a conversion? You see them every week. I was watching the Leinster under the post, and he was right in the middle of the huddle, and he was barking orders at everybody, and they went out and he kicked 2 penalties before half time. That changed the game. Leinster were back in control going into half time, even though they'd shipped the yellow card on a try, and I thought he was the catalyst for those. So now, in that context, would you want him on or off the field on Saturday?
Yeah, it's a good point.
Want him on the field. It doesn't matter where he plays, actually. He'll play anywhere. So I think he has to be in the mix for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, that's not a bad mix, is it? You know, Gibson Park will, I think, step up to the plate, and they on the wing, and Henshaw a massive boost coming back, really strong settled pack, and Conan.
Well, that would have been, look at that, Sexton, Henshaw, Ringers would have been the Irish midfield this year in the Six Nations if only for injuries. That would have been the starting midfield, no brainer. So there you have a chance to put the Irish midfield together in the biggest game of the year. Like, the only risk is Henshaw already. They'll know that, or they won't know it, but he'll know it himself. But to be fair to Henshaw, he's come back before, hasn't needed a big run in to get ready. I have a feeling they'll stick him in there, you know.
Stuart Lancaster was full of praise on Monday, I think, at the press conference for Scarlet's defence. You thought he may also possibly be alluding to Leinster's own defence a little bit subliminally in his compliments. I think we've got a. We can have a look at it here.
Of Lancaster, but interesting comments just about Scarlets.
You know, the tries they scored were exceptional on the day. They were very good tries, but I think people underestimate how good their defence is, and that's the probably missing piece of the jigsaw, really, that people don't understand that they are so well organised defensively. They're so good at the breakdown. They go hard there, but equally they keep a lot of men in the front line, and Lee Hafford is very, very good in the back field.
Yeah, like interesting comments, because people don't talk about the Scarlets' defence too much. I also think people probably don't talk about the Leinster defence enough. You mentioned those gritty wins in Exeter, and like obviously they did build towards that try with massive phases, but they also defended through a huge number of phases. And even against Saracens again, we're going to look at one example of just a 13-phase passage. I think it sums up where the kind of culture of the squad is. They're fighting for each other, aren't they? The work rate is off the charts. They want to make tackles for each other, and when you've got that in a team, it makes a huge difference. This is early on in the game, so Saracens have conceded a try. They're trying to get a physical statement into the game and bounce back at Leinster. Dan Levy, one of the stars of the show, we're going to pick him out here. I think I shared this one on Twitter, it was pretty popular. He gets in low and he actually tackles 2 guys at once. You see him there. He's got tackled, so he's tackling Vunipola.
By the way, that's not the way to put your head.
I know. Kids, don't try this at home.
Don't try this at home.
But it just kind of sums up his desire. He's not taking a chance. But technically illegal to tackle the second guy. But then you get Murphy over the ball, try and slow it down. Don't let Saracens get that lightning quick ball. There's a good clearance away there. But we can see here, just when it goes into that wide image, you can see he talks about Scarlets having guys on their feet. Leinster have 13 in the front line there, always trying to get back onto their feet straight away. There's Luke McGrath. He's been dropping into the backfield, and off screen, Rob Carney's back here. So they have those 2 in the backfield, patrolling everything, covering the kicks, as well as 13.
While you're on that, I was at a coaching day in Leinster there earlier in the season, and Lancaster was doing a kind of a review of their match up in Ulster the previous Saturday, and this is something that was a problem from last year, and they've managed to stamp it out, is that their numbering off on each side of the ruck was poor last year, and they were getting caught on short sides, and the other thing was they were getting too compressed, tied in, and they were giving away space out here and out here. Now, as the season's gone on, they've obviously worked on that spacing, and they do always play as many in the front line as they can. But that's a pointless exercise if you're too compressed. If you're going to use 13 men in the line, you've got to use them well and space them properly. And their spacing, like they were more vulnerable last year on those corners. And they were, even at the start of the season, they were getting caught a couple of times. And Lancaster was talking about that at the training day, that he was saying that this is something they were really trying to, like their work rate was good, their tackling was good, but their spacing was killing them. And when fellas got up, they were jumping into the line, but not identifying they were too close to the guy beside him, and they need to push him a little bit. And it's a concertina effect. Like, can you imagine if those 3 guys are stuck in here? There's a massive problem out here because everybody comes in.
I mean, it's such a familiar problem. Every defensive problem,
it's a very simple thing, but under pressure, it's the presence of mind to take a space on the defensive line and push the guy out. And one man can make a huge difference. And I think that you're pointing out that this year, certainly after September, October, that's become more and more comfortable for them.
Absolutely, and it also allows you to make those double hits in the line. You know, you're trying to get those dominant collisions, 2v1 in the tackle, and then one of the guys can work back to his feet, as Cronin does there, and try and get a jackal over the ball.
But you notice here, see that, Ryan? He just take that back a little bit. He was part of that tackle. He was on the double up there.
Yeah,
so he's a choice to make there. Once he gets up, he's a choice to make. Either if he's in a good position, he can lock him in, so he can create the poach, or he can contest as well. But he's got a decision to make that if he can't impact the football, he's got to get on his feet and get into the line.
Back on his feet, yeah.
And we saw even this, sometimes now there's nobody in there. It's not a rock under the law. The second guy gets out and plugs in if you have time. So that recognition of, I can't do anything positive at the ruck here, I shouldn't be here, get out, get into the line. That kind of thing makes a massive difference as well, and they're doing that very well.
Yeah, their decision making in general is really good. Saracens now actually bounce back against the grain, and like Lancaster talks a lot about in attack having both sides of the ruck alive. He also wants that in defence, because it's so easy for these guys, once that pass goes to the left, to switch off, but they're alive and coming forward as soon as they switch back to that side. There's James Ryan with the low tackle. He's really good at low tackling, and when you get that, you can get that jackal over the ball. Once the guy chopped, there you get Sean Cronin over the ball, competing. And you know, he's not in the best jackal position, he's not even on the ball, but he's just trying to slow it up, give his guys around that ruck a chance to reorganise. And Saracens play away.
There's 2 upsides to that. Slow the ball. It becomes a 3 or 4 second ruck instead of a 1 or 2 second ruck, which means you get to set your line. And they probably end up pouring more into the ruck. So instead of winning it with 2, they have to win it with 3. So they get a slower ball and they have less attackers. And just go back to your point there, Maurice, just wind it back a tad there, where that ball, where he ducks back under, which is a really good. When you see this happening, when the first receiver ducks back in here, you know the defence are on top. Because he's just, I don't know any attacking game plan that works like that, where the first receiver gets the ball, has an oh shit moment, and runs back into the pack. That's neat. But watch this line here. A lot of times, if this line dials out and starts to push, watch that line come forward.
They're still alive to it.
That's it.
Yeah.
There's nothing there except another rock, and that's when the defence are in control. And and now you see Saracens begin to wonder, like, where's the space here with the ball? And there isn't.
Yeah. Another element I think we've seen in defence is their discipline. Like, they've the lowest penalties conceded on average, 7.6 a game. Like, that's Joe Schmidt kind of territory, fantasy territory. They're really disciplined around the ruck, and here they get a positive carry. It's a bit of a soak tackle from Jordy Murphy, but that's actually the opportunity for a guy like Dan Levy, because there's that little bit of separation from Shaq Berger there, and Levy can get around in, clamp over the ball, gets on it there. He gets 2 seconds on the ball, and a lot of refs would probably give that penalty, but he's disciplined enough to hear it. I got to get away there. He gives it a signal. Look,
that was a 50-50 that went against Levy, but he had the sense to get out. And a
year ago, he might have kept on that ball.
Yeah, and you know, it's known that they'll be drilling him with this. Listen to the ref. The ref is always right. Even when he's wrong, he's right. So if he says it's a rock, it's a rock. You're not going to win that argument.
Yeah,
and that's smart play by Levy.
Yeah, absolutely. But they've got kind of advantage line now, so they can actually use one of their shapes to the left. Owen Farrell gets on the ball, first receiver. They're just going to run a simple kind of screen play there, and they're trying to isolate Easton Atewa there. And you're going to see he backs away a little bit. But we want to pick out Tyke Furlong here. Like, all their defenders are mobile, agile, they're working hard. And even as that screenplay comes and they send a little inside pass there to Maitland, you know, Natewa's kind of backed off because he had to mark up on that screen. But in comes Tyke Furlong. You're going to see him make a big hit from the side. Staying alive, hunting from the inside, working to cover your teammate on the inside. And it's massive, and it actually lifts everyone. It gives a...
It's like the short side there of when the ball goes outside you, a lot of players stop defending and they push across. what you got to do is you've got to push up and in and fill that space. That's how Furlong got into that space. He didn't dial out and go sideways. He went up and into that space. So when that inside pass came, he was able to swallow him up.
Absolutely, and it's infectious on everyone when he gets a good hit like that. We're going to pick out Ryan and Levy, who seem to always work so well together on the pitch when they're beside each other, good mates off the pitch. A really aggressive chop tackle there, and he does try and get the little wrap. It's obviously not a close-in view, but he does try to get the wrap.
Just go back there, Murray,
just
and
before
freeze that
he
before the
tackles.
contact. Sorry.
Yeah, there you go.
Like they know, just one sec. They know that he's not passing that ball, because one of the biggest triggers is when he tucks the football, he's not passing it. So they know Berger's not going to pass that, so they can take a chance and go in and smash him.
Yeah, and they do that. Ryan's such a good technical tackler.
That's
The little detail I love is Berger tries to get back to his feet, and Dan Levy grabs his shoelaces there, trying to get any little extra tackle he can.
Any purchase at all.
He never gives up. But what has done is commit 3 tacklers into that one contact. So now Saracens have their cue. Okay, now we can try and get to the width.
And they're back on their feet immediately.
Yeah,
they're right back in the line.
Their feet time straight onto their feet is really good, but there's a little bit of narrowness, which you mentioned before now, and Sarries are going to try and target that with a long pass outside. Ringrose just maybe bites in a little bit before that pass goes. He's kind of committed in there. But James Lowe, who probably...
See, Ringrose, this is the difference between us say over here and Ringrose. Yeah. Ringrose turned his shoulders in. If you look at Ringrose's shoulders there, they're just turned in slightly. And it's just that, if you watch Say the last clip, he kept his shoulders turned out.
Yeah.
So he could always push out. Once Gary turned his shoulders in here, it was always going to be hard to get out. Now you can get out, but it's a scramble. You're not in control.
He does try and recover, but we saw James Lowe is in that position out on the edge where right at the start of the season it was a real worry, his decision making. But here he's actually good, and then the key is he actually gets a tackle onto that ball when he commits in. Because if you're going to commit in, we saw like Wales against Ireland when Fergus McFadden bid in.
You've got to stop the football.
And the offload can go. He does a good job here,
yeah.
Bites in, and then he's kind of clever, standing in front of the ball, just again trying to slow things up. And Sarries are really going nowhere. They do eventually get a little gain line down the left, but again, Ethan Atewa, you mentioned leadership. Leinster have to eat back some yards here, have to get dominance again, and you see him here. He's going to get another one of those really good chop tackles. Such a powerful little hit that Vunipola goes over the top of him, and he can't complete his wrap. Now
you've got it straight on there.
Yeah, he's straight on. He's pry off his feet, is he? But again, he's playing the ref. You said the ref's always right. The cue this time is you're okay, compete. You've got guys here shouting at the ref, probably pressuring him a little bit. Give us a ward. It's 13 phases later, and we're still defending. And they get the turnover. Healy gets the turnover there. So I thought just early in the game it was a massive statement from Leinster in stopping that Saracens.
That's a psychological message to Saracens that, look, you know, you might score today, but you're going to have to work your socks off for it. And those turnovers are massive moments in terms of lifting, energising the defence. And you see that duck under there that went into the middle of a rock. You see that the defence coming up both sides. All those things send a message to Saracens. There's no easy gain lines today.
Yeah.
And that it's just the fact that they then realise, Jesus, it's going to be very hard to score this. So psychologically, they're starting to worry they mightn't get the score they need.
And you've got McGrath and Carney in the backfield patrolling everything. They didn't go to a kick option there because they couldn't get that space either. They're under pressure with the
they're playing 2 full backs floating in the back, yeah.
But if McGrath's missing it, I guess that's a big duty for someone else dropping back there. But I think that defensively, it is maybe underrated in both teams how hard they've worked on that. And as you said, like both these sides can score, not easily, but they can score in a flash. You know, they've got those players, they've got good decision makers all over the pitch. So for me, the 2 defensive performances are going to be absolutely pivotal.
If you're Wayne Pivac looking at that, and obviously Leinster look extremely strong defensively and seem to have their affairs in order, is there anything you could look at targeting from the Scarlets' perspective? Or like, can you see any chinks in that armour the way they're set up there?
Not the way they're set up there. Like, you do have to win collisions, but I think the way to do it is he has to be very selective about his starter plays, his strike plays. He needs to get a lot of traction on those. Like, if he can get like even the best defence in the world, if you could get 10, 5, even 8 metres on a starter play over the gain line and cycle it quick, the defence won't get that shape. It's not possible. So he's going to put a lot of work into his starter plays, and he's going to find ways of, if the defence is that set up, you can't get around it. He's got to find ways of going through it. So he may have to spread. If the defence is up, you can spread them out and then pick holes on soft shoulders. But it's not easy because they're all smart players. You saw the way they are, but they know when to commit and when not to commit. So it's a hard defence to break down. But there's 2 ways. If he can get good starter players in behind him, you know, off scrums and lineouts, and keep the momentum once you have it. And then the other one is if they get that shape in front of you where it's a wall of blue, is find ways of spreading them out and picking soft shoulders to go through them.
Yeah, both teams place some massive emphasis, certainly on the training ground, on their unstructured stuff. Like Leinster most of their training sessions now are quite unstructured. Yeah, they do find shape at times, but I think they'll both be looking for those kick return opportunities, spills of the ball. We're going to look at Scarlets now in analysis in a little bit, but they're really focused on turnover. Like, you know, they with Ty Byrne and with James Davies, they get a lot of turnovers, and they're set up to take advantage of that, as are Leinster now. So I think there are definite similarities between the teams, and that's why it's so fascinating to see who's more advanced now.
Yeah, well, you mentioned him there, the Byrne unit, Ty Byrne. You've taken a look at him. Obviously, we'll be touching upon his future club in the second half of the show.
What do you think, Eddie? Do you think he's done enough? For me, he's been one of the best players in Europe.
Yeah, he's been right up there all season. Like, it's not just a one-off, you know. Yeah. And often you get a player who has a big game and a big day, and everyone's talking him up. But he's been delivering every week. Yeah. So that's the acid test, really. You know?
Yeah. I mean, like, he gives you the usual second row duties. He's got a massive work rate. His engine is huge, and he's so durable. He's played like 1,800 minutes or more now, actually, at this stage, and he keeps delivering consistently. So he's got that line out. You know, he's scrummaging, hitting rucks. But what separates him from the rest is the little things we're going to look at here. Even in that instance, like, he's a good decision maker. You talk about decisions. Like, a lot of second rows will just commit into that ruck. My scrum half's behind me, I'm not going to worry about it. He wants to get onto that ball and play, as do Scarlets all the time. Quick ball, the ref actually blocks off his pass there, so he has to delay. But he has that skill to show that offload, and that's Scarlets. And that offload almost sparks him into motion. This is actually his try against Bath, where they came out of their own 22, so they're on the front foot here. Shingler gets that break because Byrne fires him off with the offload. Again, he gets out of the tackle, pops it away, and they come in field through the winger. And now Byrne, again, is looking to straight away get back on that ball. He's always trying to offer himself up. And it's a good little half break from Asquith. On the ref mic, you can hear Byrne here. He's shouting, on your shoulder. Really good support line. Gets in behind the defence, and there's Anthony Watson.
But that's what I was saying about going through the defence. You can just separate guys, get a soft shoulder, get your hands free, and they're onto that like a light. And if that happens, it's almost impossible to defend. Watch.
Yeah, he's through the line. There's Anthony Watson in front of him. You know, not many second rows are going to back their footwork here, but he shows this ridiculous step around Anthony Watson, makes a mug of him, and then has the pace to finish off. There just aren't too many second rows who can do that, and his footwork, even in traffic, is something that separates him, I think. This is the little shape we're going to see a lot from Scarlets on Saturday. 3 men, 1 passer in the middle, go out the back door and play with the second wave. And again, he's part of that second wave there, Byrne. But he just is being lined up here by Dwayne Vermeulen in the defensive line, who obviously outweighs him, is probably more explosive, a more powerful athlete. A lot of second rows just carry into contact, hope for the best, I'm going to try and outmuscle him. And it's only a small thing, but he plants off his right foot, and he kind of pirouettes out of the tackle, and leaves Dwayne Vermeulen on the ground there. And it's just the difference.
That's a Simon Zebo play.
Yeah, or Ian Downing. Ian Downing all the time. Do it. Yeah. But it's a difference between being behind the gain line and going forward. And he's consistently good in that. I think all Irish forwards do pretty good footwork. Here he is in the middle of that pod himself. He's there with the blue scrum cap, and putting his skills under pressure. He just pivots. And again, it's not the easy option. The easy option there is just carry. But Scarlets place a premium on their forwards handling the ball. He goes out the back door, and now suddenly the options are on. Toulon have got defensively tight, and it's a pretty spectacular long left-hand pass from Patchell to finish it off in the corner. A nice easy finish there on the wing. But again, it's just that little simple pass, which we've probably seen from Irish forwards again more and more. Defensively then, like, Scarlets are massive on turnover ball. They score a lot of tries or get a lot of territory out of it. And he's always looking for turnovers. He has 16 in this competition, just him alone. And it's not just the Jackals. You know, here he is in a tackle. This is off the first kick-off of the game. And instantly he's in there trying to use that little strip, the reef. He's not just accepting, I'm going to make an easy tackle here and let it go to ground. And then instantly, those 2 passes from Scarlets, one from the second row and then Shingler as well. And suddenly, they actually don't execute very well here, but suddenly there's an opportunity out there from Byrne's turnover. And the Jackal thing is huge. He's had 9 Jackal turnovers out of those 16. And it's not always, like, people probably tend to think it's always a dominant tackle when you get those turnovers, but with the Scarlets, it's actually often when they soak a tackle, as we saw at Levy earlier on, or when he's hovering in behind the line. You see him there, he's just been kind of cleared out of the last ruck. So he's in behind the defensive line. La Rochelle get a good positive carry, but the ball carrier is going to ground, and there he is over the ball. He's got a chance before those 2 arriving players can get there. And like, what his first actions are probably illegal. You can see him there. His elbows on the ground.
I don't think he's got a great release there. I think he's gone straight in.
That neither. his elbows are on the ground, he's off his feet, but he knows that when they arrive in, like, it's very easy for us to pick it out. The ref has to judge it in real time. They're going to drive him back up onto his feet, and now you can see he's on his feet again. So he's actually using their momentum against him, back on his feet, gets the turnover, and in this instance there's actually advantage playing, so they go back over and play that. But he's always just hovering in that kind of second wave. You see here, Toulon on the front foot again, offload there from Taufifenua, and Peterson goes forward. There he is coming from the side, Byrne, and it's probably technically like a side entry here. He needs to get back around on his side, but like all good open sides, even though he's not an open side, they're really good at rotating their body into it. So you approach from the side, but you snap your feet back, and now instantly it looks to the ref again, a really good picture there, that he's come from behind and he's legal to challenge that ball. Again, he's probably not fully in control of his body weight, but he knows Vermeulen's going to drive him back up, and you have to be quite brave to get into those positions, because he's going to absolutely smash your upper back. But he's got a great bit of dog in him, and he always keeps in the fight, and he gets a reward there, gets back up onto the ball, and again you see the Scarlets' mindset, an instant offload, looking to play away and move the ball to the other side of the pitch. So he's massive in terms of their attack and their defence, and he brings all the work rate as well. I think he's an unbelievably good signing for Munster. What do you think, Eddie? Is he going to play for Ireland?
Yeah, in that form, yeah. He has to come in reckoning.
Yeah.
Well, it's not going to be easy getting the Irish team at the moment, but he's certainly good enough to be in those precincts, you know, I think. Yeah. And it's funny, like, it's a kind of slightly circuitous route into the Irish team, but it's happened before. Mike Ross went to England. He was in Cork, he couldn't get a Munster contract. He went off to, I think it was Harlequins.
Yeah. And
then he eventually came back, you know. So, like,
Chris Farrell's another example.
Yeah,
went to France.
Sometimes when you go away like that and you just do something different, certain environment, things start to fit for you. I mean, it doesn't mean that where he started out that they got it wrong. You know, he's obviously developed as a player for whatever reason. Sometimes that's because he got better coaching. Sometimes it's because in his own head he flipped a switch. You know, and players do that.
Yeah, and for him staying fit, like he had 2 torturous years in Leinster. And as you say, like, I've seen Leo Cullen get a bit of criticism for letting him go, but at the time it was definitely the right decision.
You see, that's playing Monday morning quarterback. Yeah. You know, like it's easy. Like, you know, you should have known. But at the time, like, who jumped up and down the time and said this is an insane decision? Nobody. Because the information they had was this is the best decision. You know, so I think it's easy to do that in retrospect, you know, kind of say, oh, you should have known better. Not really, because in that environment, you are where you are and you make that decision. Do you make wrong ones? Of course you do. You know, nobody makes the right decision all the time. So I think the fact he's coming back is the most important thing. And he's probably better for his time away. Yeah. You know, and he's found his mojo, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's an incredible journey. One of the best players in Europe now for me.
Yeah, well, Leinster's loss will probably transpire to be Munster's gain at some point next season. We'll touch upon the Red Men in the second half. We'll call this half-time for now. We'll also have questions from you guys for the lads here, giving away a jersey, and we'll have predictions at the end as well. But go enjoy the bar and whatnot for 15-20 minutes. We'll chat to you in a sec. Cheers. How's it going? We'll kick off again for the second half. Just a reminder about the jersey giveaway. Don't know where the jersey is gone, but just to let you know that Bank of Ireland are proud to hand over their jersey sponsorship to the Irish Heart Foundation for an upcoming Pro 14 game. That jersey will be going home with one of you when we're taking questions towards the end. We're going to pick the great man Eddie O'Sullivan to pick the best question. I actually forgot to tell you that. I presume it's okay.
No pressure.
Yeah, no pressure at all. Let's get into Munster then. It was a friend of mine, Oisin Kelly, who's down in the audience, put it to me at the interval that one of the things that it hasn't really been talked about where Munster is concerned is the fact that they changed head coach halfway through the season, or in a European Cup final, or European Cup semi-final rather. I mean, obviously the fear at the time when there was that transition, however great it was that their season could go south very quickly, but they've actually probably improved over the last couple of months.
Well, first of all, I love that you're getting your questions at the interval at half time.
Well, here's the thing. Oisin is a Munster fan, so he doesn't want the Leinster jersey anyway. So he's...
and secondly, it's been really seamless. I think Johan van Graan came in and understood that he couldn't just impose his philosophy or style straight away. It's essentially the same game plan, the same kind of core philosophies, kick out your own half, be very direct, very aggressive, set piece orientated, Conor Murray's kicking game as well. So I don't think there's been a big departure on the pitch. Also the assistant coach I think have been really important, and Van Graan mentioned that again this week. He said Felix Jones and Jerry Flannery have been really important, especially this week, in kind of he said guarding him from some of the stuff they messed up in the semi-final last year. So they've helped him adapt into the setup in Munster, and the senior players, guys like Peter O'Mahony and Murray, are extremely influential as well.
Niederbauer is probably a worry because the defence coach, like, going, that's an area that's, if that got ropey, it could really hurt you, but they don't seem to have suffered from that. They've managed to, like, there's no obvious glitch along the line here, and I think you're right, he hasn't tried to change things too much, which is a smart play. Maybe I think I've been impressed with some of the starter plays. I mean, we'll talk about it later, but I think he's kept it on track. Now, it'll be interesting next year, no matter what happens, will he try and put more of his stamp on the team? But I think he's been smart about this year, about keeping it on track. And I'd say he would have probably taken a lot of advice from someone like Conor Murray or Peter O'Mahony, but this is where we are, this is what we do well, this is what will get the guys energised,
Yeah, so. Well, I think the thing he's excited about in pre-season, you mentioned there, is attack. He recognised that, they all recognise that against Saracens especially, was shown up, as Billy Holland said this week, as one-dimensional. They feel they've moved on quite a bit from there. I guess we'll see the results of that on Sunday or not, but I think that's the big project for him. They have a lot of the core stuff in their rugby really solid. As you mentioned, defence, work rate's always good in set piece, but I think they need to be a little bit more creative, potentially using a guy like Rory Scanlon a bit more as a second playmaker. Zebo's obviously going to be gone. Whoever's a fullback, potentially adding a bit more in terms of playmaking as well. So I think they're in a pretty good shape. 2 semi-finals in a row is a pretty good return for the province, having had such worries only 3 years ago.
I don't think when everyone heard that there was going to be a change of head coach, that you said, well, you're going to make the semi-finals of the Pro 14, you're going to make semi-final of Europe, they'd bite your hand off. And now there's a chance that, they get things right on the weekend, they could be heading into a European final. So I think in terms of that seamless transition, they've pulled it off, and you must get huge credit for that, because I think when something like that happens, you take it for granted. But what went into making it happen would have been, I think, pretty spectacular. I was pretty sure there would be a hiccup along the road, and there hasn't been. And a lot of credit to everybody for that. Now, this would be the icing on the cake if they were to win on the weekend, get into a European final.
Yeah, it'd be incredible. But it's a great point. Good point, Oisín. Very good point.
Well done, Oisín. With regards to having played
Gets
Racing
the
already...
jersey.
Sorry, Oisín, you're going to win the jersey.
So
having played Racing twice already this season, like in the pool stages, can you read much into that? Obviously 2 very close games in the end. Probably a perception that Munster threw it away at Racing. Yeah, it probably was one that got away from them, but then different ball game now, I suppose, in the semi-final. What can you read into the 2 games? Obviously a victory apiece in the pool stage.
Yeah, well, they're very, very familiar with each other. I think Racing, for me, are probably the least French of the French sides. They are fitter than a lot of French teams have been in the past, and we saw that. They finished strongly in the U Arena, and even I think French teams generally are getting a bit fitter. Munster will probably still back themselves in that regard, but Racing's defence is a little bit more organised. We will look at one of the potential flaws in that soon enough. Their attack, you mentioned set piece there, you can see them running some old Joe Schmidt plays actually, so they're a little bit behind, but they're really starting to catch up. I think they're the most professional of the French outfits, and that for me is probably the concern. Their defence is the best in the top 14 statistically speaking, and they work quite hard as well, and they'll finish out strong. But Munster know exactly what's coming. They know that if they give them that momentum off the set piece, that guys like Nakarawa, who has 19 offloads in this competition, are going to spark up. And you saw it against Clermont. Their discipline was quite poor. Clermont were keeping the scoreboard ticking over in that quarter final, and then suddenly they get lazy on a kick chase. Andro kind of kickstarts the kick return, a couple of offloads, and Nakarawa throws a ridiculous dummy and goes into the right of the post, and the game is completely changed. Similar again with the one Carter created with that slightly forward pass. But
slightly? Jeez, he got it in the next zip code.
Okay, that very forward pass, but it was a simple missed tackle, and they got that momentum, and when they got onto that front foot, they're unbelievably lethal. Their players just come alive. So I think Munster are aware of exactly what it's going to take. Racing's line out is very strong, really good line out defence, so they'll try and spoil there as well.
They are where they are because they're a very good team, and you're right, they are kind of untypically not French, but I still think psychologically I think Munster have the edge. I really do. And I think the fact that they're out of Paris, and into Bordeaux is in Munster's favour. I think Munster, again, they would have taken huge energy out of the Toulon win. That game, let's be honest, I watched that game, And if they had to play the following day, they probably wouldn't have won it. That's not taken away from the performance. I mean, they literally did everything they had to do to get across the line. Now, when you win those games, it's a sense of energy about that. You know, geez, you don't win those games for nothing. Like the confidence and the kind of the quiet kind of, I suppose, belief that sneaks in on the back of one of those. That like, and we've beaten Racing before. We've beaten them in Towan Park. We should have beaten them away. All like at this level, all that stuff's probably more important than all the tactical stuff. You know, the tactical stuff take care of itself if you get that bit right. The mental side of it is huge. And I just feel Munster are in a very good space. Then there's no real pressure on them. No one's going to say they're going to walk away with this. Like, there's more pressure on Leinster, let's be honest. And for that reason, I think Munster are where they want to be in many ways. So I'd be quietly confident it's going to happen. You know.
Yeah, it doesn't feel as daunting. You know, when you travel away for a French semi-final, it's generally going to be a bit of fear, but this doesn't feel that way. They're going to Bordeaux, even they've got history there. Unbelievable day in 2000 that kick-started the whole thing. I don't know if you feed into that now. I don't know if coaches use that stuff.
It's probably too far away, but I think the fact I know that it's just as alien for Racing to be in Bordeaux as it is for Munster, if not more so. It'll be weird for them to be playing in like a home game away from home, if you know what I mean. So I think Munster have the edge on that. The venue, I think they're not afraid of Racing. They know they're going to get it right though. They can't have a poor performance. And I don't think they can ride their luck like they did against Toulon as well. Like Toulon beat themselves in many ways. And again, people might say, oh no, you're taking it away from Munster. But look, go back over that game frame by frame, and like Toulon would kick themselves for letting that slip. They had a couple of chances to win it and they blew it. I mean, once Tranduck came on the pitch, I knew Toulon were going to lose. Like, he was going to find a way of making Munster win. You know, he's got a penchant for doing that. But you know, but having said that, yeah, and I think that's a big thing for Munster now, that got past Toulon, you know, taking your chances and all that. Like, it's got a lot in that mentally for them, and I think that weighs heavily on Racing when they meet on Sunday.
Yeah, absolutely. We didn't allude to Leinster's defeat to Benetton because I think within context it probably won't have much of a bearing this weekend. But for Munster to go down to South Africa for 2 weeks, I suppose beforehand you looked at it and you thought it's logistically maybe not ideal. You're going down there, long flights, the whole lot, and then you've got a European Cup semi-final. It probably has transpired to work out in their favour in that you've got 2 weeks in good weather, a bonding session with the squad, and you've got a clutch victory against a very good team in the Cheetahs in the lead up to the game. Like, it, I suppose maybe if you were to look at it in paper beforehand, you would have been like, let's not do that. But the way it's worked out, they got the very best out of it.
Yeah, and being down there in Limerick on Monday, they were all extremely positive. The players were clearly buzzing. The atmosphere behind the place was really exceptional. And Van Graan mentioned they got the maximum they could out of it. As you say, getting that group tighter knit. Guys who have been there together all season haven't really played alongside each other, roomed with each other ever before, obviously. Yeah. Younger guys, you know, getting to know Conor Murray, guys who've been away during the Six Nations, all that stuff is massive for a sense of momentum. And getting those 2 wins, Kings obviously would have expected that, but they were in a difficult situation against the Cheetahs, who are a good team. And obviously Conor Murray was the most pivotal guy. Nice pick of the lads there. But it has worked out really well. And
tough life, lads, isn't it? Professional rugby player, huh?
Yeah.
Who'd do it? But I think it did work out in a way. It turned out to be like a warm weather camp. And they had 2 games, 2 important games. The easier one first. They got in a pickle on that one and got out of it. And then to get a good win against the Cheetahs, I just think it has kind of energised them about this. And there's no doubt that the change of scenery, the rooming together, like there's a lot of kind of positive energy and bonds built on these kind of away trips if you have enough time. Now, it doesn't normally happen because with the Pro 14 you fly in somewhere, you go to a hotel, you eat, you play, you fly home again. But it's like a tour. You have a team room, you're eating together a lot, there's a bit of banter, there's a bit of time off, and that builds the energy around the squad. You know, it's like some of the best bonding you can get done with a squad is away on tour, like in a summer tour. If it goes well, it could be fantastic in terms of building the team for the autumn and stuff. So they would have got that sort of value over that 2 weeks. They got the 2 results. And they had to work their way out of a few pickles at the way, which is good as well. So I thought it was a good thing, provided it went well, and it went well. So it's not a good thing.
They also got a 9-day turnaround after Friday to Sunday fixture, which we hadn't realised before they left.
And the flight thing isn't as big as it's made out. I mean, there's no jet lag flying from South Africa. It's north south. It's it's not ideal if you're a big guy sitting in a small seat, but the fact is, it's not that more like if you're if you're talking about Super Rugby where they're flying, New Zealand to Australia, or to Argentina, that's serious jet lag issues. But it's not a problem. I think the cost benefit analysis, the flights won't be anti-negative.
Worked out really well.
Spot on. Well, we reckon with regards to team news that Keith Earls is looking okay. We've heard he's returned to training. There's probably a fair chance he'll start, I think.
Yeah, when he cancelled his scheduled media gig on Monday, we had a suspicion that he was going to be involved because we were pestering questions then. And by all accounts, he trained, and he's trained well, and he looks pretty good for the weekend. So that's huge boost, especially with that unit in the back three, because we talk about their improving attack. I think those three guys have linked quite well on counter-attack a couple of times. I think against Cast, when Earls actually kick-started and Zebo finished off one of their most attractive tries of the season. Also defensively, the pendulum and working in the backfield is really important. So that's a huge boost for him. There's a little bit of concern over Jack O'Donoghue. Took a knock in the ankle. I think they did mention that the plane maybe swelled it up a little bit, but again, I think he will pull through for such an important game. An injury that he can probably play through, hopefully for his sake, because it's a massive point of his career. So I think they're looking pretty good, Nick. Obviously, they're still missing guys like Farrell, Tauta, Chris Clute, Tommy O'Donnell. So they're down quite a bit of experience and quite a few key guys. But the fellas who came in there, like Sammy Arnold, was exceptional against Toulon. Maybe didn't offer too much in attack, but defensively so solid, aggressive, really powerful in contact as well. And O'Donoghue was running over the top of Nanu and Bastro at one stage. So their squad has delivered, and I think, again, team-wise, they're looking pretty good.
Absolutely, yeah. Murray, as you alluded to a couple of minutes ago, you were going to have a look at Racing's defence, I think.
Yeah, well, we're going to look. You mentioned the set piece, and I'd be interested in Eddie's take on the Racing defence here. Like, Munster have been very creative in some of the stuff they've come up with, or they've robbed it from somewhere. I don't know where he's got it.
Usually it's plagiarism of some kind.
Yeah. He's a guy who spends a lot of time watching rugby. When he comes into the press conference, his eyes are always bloodshot. He's clearly been up all night watching clips of the Curry Cup or something like that. So they always got something clever up their sleeves. And like the best set piece stuff is relatively simple. And I think one of the things they will look at again this weekend is the midfield combination. So Chavancy and Vakatawa. Vakatawa is a converted winger. He's been playing 13 this season, and I think he's still a little bit unsure defensively. So this is one of their early, 30th minute here, one of your first scrum attacks, and they try and get the ball into his zone to give him a little bit of a hard decision to make. You get the 12, this move we've seen so many times, get Scannell up flat, taking the ball with Chris Farrell. In this instance, it'll be Sammy Arnold running that hard line there. Keatley out the back with his winger coming with him, the blind winger. Pretty simple play. Scannell has a couple of options. You can carry, tip.
The principle there is to flood this space here with 4 attackers and see how many of these guys bite down. So you flooded it with 4, these guys bite down, and then the space is out wide.
So they go out the back. Now the key there is Chavancy is getting stuck there on that decoy line. Farrell does a really good job, gets to the outside shoulder, bump him out of the line, and suddenly you have that disconnection between a 12 and 13 who are a little bit unfamiliar with each other, let's say. So he's back out of line, you can see there now, and Vakatawa is now going to have to link up with his 10 there. You've seen Keatley come around the corner with Earls, and they're just trying to create a bit of hesitancy in Vakatawa there, because he obviously wants to drift out onto Earls early. He wants to be sure that Tales, who is the 10 in this instance, is going to get to 10 there. But look, they've got him just to turn his shoulders in. You mentioned it earlier on, and that's the cue. Now Keatley can send that past Earls. Vakatawa, who's an unbelievable athlete, does recover. He finds his feet again and gets a stretching tackle, but Earls with a really brilliant offload to Zebo. Lovely little flick on. Great skill, and they're away down the right. This passage actually ends with Conway probably butchering a chance in the right corner. But you mentioned how important it is to get onto the front foot. This is the reverse angle, and Eddie, you kind of pointed out how condensed they get in.
Yeah, look at this. They've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 defenders locked in here, and like you could nip him that corner there. But
so they're just trying to overload. You see there now, it's basically a 2-on-1 for Vakatawa. He's in a.
So like what they're doing is they're throwing like 5 attackers into a space, and then you got to make a read. Like, I mean, it could be here that we'll see a play later where the player runs instead of passes. So it's a good read, and like it's that's where you make your decision.
Yeah.
But you set that up by flooding those channels and let the defence decide what they want to do.
One more replay of the Zebo.
This is classic Zebo.
Lovely.
Are you being harsh on Conway here, saying he butches it?
No, not this chance. Sorry, they go through another couple of phases into the 22, and they're right on the front foot. You use the set piece launch, and you're over the gain line. I think it was Earls was waiting unmarked. It was a difficult pass now. but they have to be.
But
so
I think
clinical
this
with
is
those
great
chances.
to see, because a lot of the stuff we watch now is just predictable. The ball goes from 9 to 10 and he gives it to the 12, puts his head down and plows into 2 people.
Yeah.
And like that's not creativity. That's full frontal assault regardless of casualties.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really tax the defence unless they want to miss a tackle. That kind of stuff I think is hugely exciting. I love seeing it because it's asking questions of the defence. And if they screw up, you could score. And even if they don't screw up, you're going to get a gain line and you can play on the front foot. So to me, it's the way to go.
So a couple of weekends later, again, left-hand side scrum, very similar position. I don't know if Clermont, they probably watched Munster doing that and said, we can actually exploit that space as well. And there's other clips like this. I worked back through their set-piece defence, and that centre pairing have been picked apart by a few teams.
They're very unsure of each other. They don't quite trust each other, so they play on their own rather than playing as a unit. And that's catastrophic in a midfield defence.
So it's slightly different. The 9 comes to here as first receiver, and he's going to run a loop play off the 10. The 10 on the ball with this hard line from the 12. Again, trying to sit down Gavan. It's a little loop play. Now Chavancy there, he gets out beyond that first decoy, so he's clear.
He's actually done a good job there.
Yeah,
but then he just switches off.
He switches off for some reason. He needs to come forward there, be really aggressive.
He's got to plug that hole there, and look what he does.
But he just disappears, and now again, Vakatao in that situation that he is dreading is exposed against 2 men, and it's the easiest line break.
Para runs through here.
Para's through, lovely pass
pass
over the top, and beat them. It is on the right wing. Gets
a great finish now.
Gets the fend there on Rugby Show and finishes in the corner. But we're going to see the reverse angle again. You're going to see how disconnected they get. Again, Para is going to come on that loop play there around his 10. And Chavancy there, he's done a good job. Sorry, he's just a little bit...
Yeah, I mean, his job was to pin Chavancy, and Chavancy made the read and slipped outside him.
He gets outside
but
him
now
there.
he's got to plug in here, and he's got to pick up Para, and then it's all okay then.
There's no reason for him not to come forward and be aggressive there, because this guy here, the 13, obviously can't get the ball.
He's out of the game. He's
like
in front of the football.
He's a blocker in American football, but he just gets kind of stuck on him there. It's very passive, and now there's that disconnect again between 12-13 and Para, who's not even the most explosive athlete, is able to scorch through there and throw a lovely pass over the top. Good finish in the right corner. So I think that's something that Munster will go back to again. And there are those little glimpses of weakness also in their backfield. I think we saw in the arena Murray kind of boxed over in their 22.
Yeah.
They're not very good at patrolling that. So there's although they are a bit more organised than some French teams, I think there's little opportunities.
Well, you mentioned him there, but not that he's lacking in plaudits necessarily. Conor Murray, I think the consensus best scrum half in the world now, really at this stage, certainly if you listen to people here. How has it become so important? And then,
What a choice.
yeah, maybe the second best scrum half.
Do you want a calendar or something?
Don't look at me. Yeah, it's on my bedroom wall. What is it about Murray, I suppose, at this stage of his career? Like, probably at his athletic prime, but so much of it comes down to just his intelligence more so than his impressive athleticism, obviously.
Yeah, I think it's mindset, isn't it? He looks so comfortable out there. Even he gets one of those long-range penalties, even in the Grand Slam, and he's just like, I'll have a pop, no bother. He's not fazed by anything, extremely confident in his skills, and I think it's based on hard work.
He's in one of the most stressful positions on the field, where you're constantly making decisions about like 4 different things. Do I pass? Do I run? Do I kick? And he's organising other people around him, and he does it with an incredible calmness, which gives everybody around him huge confidence. And then when he does decide to do something, he executes it really, really well. He doesn't do bad things on the field. He doesn't kick badly. He doesn't pass badly. Every now and again, but no player is perfect. Every tennis player overhits the ball sometimes, but he just has this calmness about him, and he's not ruffled. And when someone in that key position is that composed around the team, it just makes everybody feel calm. It's a strange thing, but it's very effective under pressure.
Yeah, I'd say he's the most important player to their team in the competition. I don't think, without him, I wonder would Munster really be in this position, because he's always come up with those big plays.
No,
even the clever try.
People are saying he's the best scrum. He's the best scrum half in the world. Tell me who's better than him.
Yeah, but people point to Aaron Smith because of the quality of his passing.
Well, who won that battle in Chicago?
Yeah, that's one game.
Yeah,
that's one game.
Well, one is enough when you get beaten up like that.
Yeah.
I think he is the best scrum half in the world. I
agree with you. I agree.
You can make cases for other guys, but they're just making an argument.
And especially defensively, he's so important to the team.
That's my case.
And I've made your case for you. We want to look at some of the examples. Like, he's defensively, he's brilliant. We've looked at him in past shows during Six Nations.
And actually, Joe Schmidt used them, or like Andy Farrell used them against England in the line.
Yeah, always in the line.
which was a kind of a departure, and he made 9 tackles against England, which for a scrum half is up around what your back row might make, because he was in the line. And you can see examples in that England game as if he wasn't in the line, we were in big trouble out wide, but the fact he was in the line, everything was fine. Yeah. So he's a physical guy. He's prepared to play in the contact area as much as anybody else, which is not usual for a scrum half.
Normally you're looking for that scrum half to run over, but you're actually trying to avoid this guy.
You wouldn't want to run it.
We just wanted to look at some of his kicking and some of his attacking play, because this is so important. We mentioned Munster trying to get out of their half. They don't like to play in their own half, and people probably bemoan the amount of box kicking in modern rugby, but it's a massive part of it. And like, while he is the best player, it's all about his teammates kind of facilitating. He's always directing them. You can see him here. He just wants a bit more kind of cover over the ball on that side, and you'll see Keeley go there, Archer will come in. Everyone's just trying to work to get Murray the best position to kick. What Munster have been really good at is essentially blocking the guys running through on Conor Murray here, and the referees have kind of clamped down on this. Normally you would have seen Dave Kilcoyne with his hand kind of resting on the ruck. Refs have been like, no, you can't do it anymore, you're not part of the ruck, you have to be shoulder bound.
Blind, yeah. So
they're standing off, also behind the ruck as well, so technically they're not blocking. Obviously they are when a guy tries to run through into that space, but they're really good at constructing these opportunities for him to kick well. You can see Jean Klein there as well as work back to his feet, and now he's got this little pocket here where no one can really get at him, and his skill, which is exceptional in the box kick, comes to the fore, and he clears that all the way up to the 10-metre line, taking them out of pressure. Now they can go and have a go at the line out, the Raskin line out, get their line speed in
defence. That's a 40-metre
well.
exit apparently, which is huge. I mean, even if that goes back to Keighley, he's probably not going to get it that far up the field.
Yeah, it takes him
to box kick that far into touch is quite extraordinary.
Well, Keeley's also more likely to get blocked down, isn't he?
And he's deeper as well. He's another 10 or 12 metres back when he gets it, and there's more pressure on him. So, and the thing about that is that because Murray does that, you can go to Keighley as well at an off, and they mix the pressure point on the defence. Don't know like who's going to kick, is it Murray or Keighley? So that takes pressure off Keighley as well. Like if everything, I remember like probably one of the things Raj did really well in his time, because Peter Stringer didn't kick the ball a lot, if at all. Raj was always the focal point for the op. They knew he was getting it. So, but that can take a lot of pressure off Keighley, Yeah,
and they also use it as an attacking weapon. Like, it's not just in their own half. We see them box kick when they're in the opposition half as well. And even here, like he's glanced early. When we come into the clip, he still actually hasn't glanced down the other side. He's glanced early, so he knows the pocket of space he's going to identify. And it's an incredibly difficult skill, probably underrated. Like he's just getting that large step backwards, giving himself a bit more space, and his head down over the ball. Again, not looking at where he's kicking to, just focusing on the skill, and he gets such height on his kicks. He gives his chaser so much time. You're looking at probably 4 seconds plus.
The hang time is huge.
Hang time is huge.
So the longer the hang time, actually, the deeper you can kick it as well, because you have more time to chase it.
Yeah.
So like that's a lot of hang time on that. It's a 20-metre box kick, and there's pressure arriving with the ball, which is perfect.
4+ seconds, probably 20 metres upfield, 25 metres. Your chaser has a realistic attempt, and like these Cheetahs players could have done better here, trying to escort Sweetenham, who's chasing it. They don't really get any sort of block or shepherding on him, and he's able to get up. They're very indecisive. But even if we roll back there, you can see that space that he had identified before he kicked. That winger there is up. The fullback is deep across in the backfield, so Murray's picked out a clear space. Now my chaser
he knew that was there before he picked the ball up. I mean, that was a decision made in advance of picking the ball up. But you see here, even if he catches that, Sweetenham makes the tackle, and they're locked into practically into their 22. So it's a win-win. Once the kick is good, it's a win-win. If you catch it, it's great. You're on the front foot. If they catch it, you've locked them into their own 22. So the kick has got to be on the money. If that kick is 5 metres further, he catches it, makes one pass, is a counter-attack on.
Yeah, and it's a pretty good tool if you've attacked for a while near halfway and you're not making progress.
Well, usually we're looking at what's happening here is the 10 is looking to find grass in the backfield, which can be very difficult. But if he can do that for you, if he can get you right into that backfield with a chance of winning the ball back, that's a good position to be in.
And Munster win a penalty there, 35 metre gain upfield, win a penalty, you're straight on the attack. This is 30 seconds after he comes on the pitch. I think everyone probably saw this one, but it's another example of, you mentioned to me earlier on, like a scrum half who's like a back row.
Yeah, he's very powerful. Yeah, he's hugely powerful and he's physical. So like he's not just a guy who can pass and kick, he can run over you as well, which is a bit of a nightmare for the fringe defence,
Yeah, and his decision making is so good. Really good effort from the scrum there.
I mean, I can't remember, and I probably should know. I don't know how many tries he's got for Ireland alone. He's got quite a few tries for a scrum half.
He's up over 10 now, and he's 7 this season for Munster. So and it wasn't the case at the start of his career. He wasn't scoring that frequently, but as he's become more confident, more powerful, and his decision making there, you can see him picking out that opportunity. The guy he wants to pick on is the opposition 9, because he knows, like, and it is about teammates facilitating Murray. He knows that Dan Goggins coming on this hard line. He knows that that 9, having been in that position himself, obviously, is going to be worried, and you can see there that Cheetah's 9 is already going. Murray knows that he can use his power to snipe into that space. Little dummy before he powers forward into the hole, and he doesn't actually get to the line, but he's so clever in just whipping his body around that side and finishing over the line. They do go to the TMO to finish it, but I mean, it changes the game in a split second with his power, with his good decision making near the line. And because he's such a threat, this is just a small example of how the defence worries so much about him. He's arriving into the ruck there, and the player we're going to keep an eye on here is the 8 from Cheetahs. He's that left pillar there on the side of the ruck, so he's got to guard that space. But what Murray does, it's just a little glance. You can see him there when we roll it back. He's making that little glance left. Now this guy on the right hand side of the ruck is shitting himself. He's like, oh, Conor Murray's coming at me, and he's calling for support. That pillar, the pillars should never really leave their position. He's going to go. As soon as he goes, Murray waits, bides his time. He sees him make that move, and that's when the pass goes. He doesn't even snipe himself.
He has to go, because Munster have an attacker. That's a 2-on-1 there, so he is right to panic.
Yeah.
He's in trouble because Munster have a winger.
He's right to shit himself.
Yeah, and he's got to go, but what's got to happen is when he goes,
fold in.
He's got to push in, or he's got to get out. But you see Munster hold him in. Yeah. Smart play. But he's got to push over straight away. But Murray sees it a mile off.
Yeah, and Jack O'Donoghue just, again, when you talk about forwards footwork, just getting into that space where the 8 is vacated. And they don't make a big gain line, but it's a simple little look from Conor Murray that's like
well, it's a big gain line because you're 5 metres out. Like the value of real estate changes as you get near the goal line, you know.
Yeah, teasing the defence. So yeah, he's so important to Munster in so many different ways. Brilliant player.
100%. We're going to get predictions for Munster and Leinster in a moment. We're going to take your questions first of all, so if we could get a microphone down to the kind folks here. If you have a question, just put up your hand. In the meantime, while we're getting that set up, we were sent an interesting photograph from the year 1998 recently, Eddie. It was the Galway senior football team that won the All-Ireland. They beat Kildare in the All-Ireland final. I think it was 114 to 110 that day in Croke Park. I don't know if you could spot any...
I did not play on that game.
What was the story? Because I wouldn't have known you were involved at that stage at all with the Galway footballers. This is at the reunion last week, was it?
I was a strength and conditioning coach.
Right.
From afar, I was actually working in America, and I was writing their fitness programs from. I used to beat them in the winter, do their weight sessions, you know, set them up, and then in the summer when I was away, and they were doing mainly running. And I go back 20 years, so. But I used to write all their fitness programs for them, and John O'Mahony was able to implement them. So they didn't like me because I used to run them into the ground, you know.
Talking about during the week, John O'Mahony did a meeting of that football team. You were mentioned quite a lot.
They were.
You were mentioned quite a lot.
Oh yeah. That was at that function actually. That was.
It was the 20-year anniversary, was it?
20-year anniversary. I wasn't 20 years ago. But as you can tell, some of them are quite bold. But that was taken last weekend. But that was the Galway team of 20 years ago. And the other guy there who was involved, if you see him, is Tommy Gorman was involved. He used to do the video analysis because he was working in Sligo at the time, and he used to video games and cut them. He was working with one of the newspapers in Sligo, so there was we were kind of like the Secret Service. We weren't seen, but we used to have an impact, you know. But that was the reason for that. As I did the strength conditioning, that was it.
Fair enough. I suppose it's something that we've seen now probably implemented in GA a lot more. Like you've got Bernard Dunn working with the Dubs and things like that. Yep. People coming in from the outside. Fair play. We'll take questions there. So there is a Leinster jersey on offer, and I have to remind you, just that Bank of Ireland are proud to announce the Irish Heart Foundation as a shirt sponsor for an upcoming Pro 14 games. So we'll take your questions for the lads if anybody has any, and we'll get Eddie to pick the best one for the Leinster jersey. No questions. So this is going to be awkward. A gentleman here and a gentleman here. It always takes a couple to kick things off. And
where do you see Tyke Byrne fitting in when he starts playing for Ireland? It's obviously very hard to drop either Ryan or Henderson, and then the back row is obviously started.
Yeah, I don't think you can see it like that. He'll go in and he'll you don't get into the team and you take up a position, you hold it forever. He'll become part of the squad. He'll become a go-to guy, I think, in the second row. And it's going to be a tough precinct to break into. when you see the calibre of players that are there. But I think he's going to find himself in those precincts, and then it's up to himself. You know, you got to deliver. But it's just about getting your foot in the door and making a statement. And I think he's done that now in a sense. I'll be amazed if he doesn't go to Australia.
Yeah, I'd expect him in that squad. Like it's hard to say. We don't know who's going to be injured. Like a guy like Ultan Dillane, who didn't feature in the Six Nations and has had probably a tough time off the pitch, has to come back into the mix as well, and certainly has a lot of improvement to go. So there's going to be loads of options there, definitely. But I think he's second row. Yeah, he's played a lot in the back row with Scarlets, but I think that's only been when they've had guys away on international duty. So.
I think the Irish back row is too hard to get into anyway. You look at the calibre of players around the back row. It's probably a better chance of making it into the lock position.
Is it one or two? Is it the case as well though that we've seen, particularly I suppose with Leinster, but it probably applies to Ireland as well, where it's rare you're going to have all of the options fit, and while one is out, you can cement your place for at least a few months. Maybe you pick up a knock, then somebody else comes in, and it's just a sort of it's almost a conveyor belt, like.
Yeah, that has been the case, hasn't it? Like, you know, Van der Fleer starts.
This year on the Six Nations, like
Van der Fleer starts, and then
we've had a lot of guys that come in and play, you know. But
Rhys Ruddock is always a forgotten man. I feel he gets injured, he comes back, he's in red hot form, and it's like, geez, where's this guy been for the last?
Yeah, the depth is very good.
But the depth is huge now, and I think what we're seeing in the last few years is that the academies are really driving through the talent. They're starting to deliver, like in terms of the numbers of guys coming through the academies. I mean, the academies started 10 or 15 years ago. They were just getting set up. They were finding their feet. They're now actually delivering the product. You know, to be fair, the schools game as well is such high calibre at the moment that they're going into the academies and everything's ratcheted up. I mean, I remember when I coached the Irish under 20s 20 years ago, they looked like schoolboys who got out of school last year. I was in Donnybrook when the under 20s played Italy this year, and they all looked like they could play professional rugby in the morning. They looked just like really just ramped up physically. And you see someone like Larmour, who's like an extraordinary athlete, but they're all a product of the academy and the schools game.
Fair enough. Gentleman up the front here.
I know you've done marvellous analysis of Llanelli and Racing Metro, but do you think that Leinster beating Saracens and Munster beating Toulon were a great side, that actually the two strongest teams, bar Leinster and Munster, have been beaten?
Yeah, I think the thing you have to be careful is when you get to this point, it's knockout rugby, and if you're to take it just on form, I think the two Irish teams are on the pole position in that respect. But it's 80 minutes of knockout rugby, so simple thing like a yellow card or a bad pass or a bad refereeing decision can change a game, and you're hoping that doesn't happen. So that's the risk. But I still think Munster are in a good place mentally. They're in a good place going to play in Bordeaux, and I think they'll really be quietly confident they can get it done. They won't say that, they'll talk Racing up. I think Leinster, I worry about Llanelli because they're kind of where Munster are in terms of they can come to Dublin and pull a stroke. That's why I wouldn't be as effusive about Leinster. But having said that, it'd be hard to back against them with the talent they have on show.
Yeah. I guess with the opposition, it's because they don't have that European history as well. You know, Scarlets haven't been here since 06, 07. Racing were in the final in 2016, but probably underperformed in what was an awful final. So they probably don't have that history. It doesn't feel as significant.
I do think though winning the Pro 14 last year has been huge in terms of their confidence about on a big occasion.
And Racing have done that domestically
about
as well.
Their business,
They've been in those finals as well. So while on the outside it looks like an easier fixture, I think these two clubs are definitely on the rise as European forces.
Fair enough. Anybody else have a question for the guys? Oh, good for you.
Do you think if Heaslip hadn't retired and was at full fitness, would he make it into the Leinster squad?
I didn't get that, sorry.
If Heaslip hadn't retired and was at full fitness, would he make it into the Leinster squad at the moment?
I think he'd be starting number 8. Yeah, I do. It's easy to forget when a guy's gone, but he was absolutely brilliant. He was still performing. He
was, I suppose, but he'd be under a bit of pressure. I thought Conan's been outstanding this year. Like, it's really, he's been special. But he probably would, given his experience. You know, like that does count on the big occasions. Like, but having said that, it's one of those precincts where it's almost like hard. Here's the funny thing about that is you see someone like Dan Levy this year, like who was really not mapped at the start of the year, gets his chance. Boy, does he grab it. Why? Because he knows one misstep here and you're going to be watching the stand, you know. And that's the pressure on these guys to take the opportunities, that's at the end of the day, that's the kind of pressure you want on all your players. Nobody's assuming they're going to get a start because it could go either way here. And I think that's been a hallmark of particularly in Leinster with the depth they have, for sure.
Well, you mentioned the experience. I think the comfort of having a guy like Heaslip there is because he's had those big moments in those big games. Like his teammates talk about little things like that Luke play against Northampton where he takes out a man after he passes in for a try, the tackle on Stuart Hogg for Ireland. His teammates always mention those things, and that's a massive reassurance when you have that beside you. Before the injury, he was still very fit as well. He's obviously a very professional guy. So, yeah, I think he probably would have been starting, but it has been positive probably for Irish rugby because now even Max Deegan's coming through, getting games as well. So, and Jordy Murphy's been in unbelievably good form as well. So, as you say, the depth is growing, and that's probably as a result of that.
No wonder Jamie Heaslip hates the media. His retirement has been positive for Irish rugby, you were saying.
They're your words.
Anybody else? Oh, there are more, sorry.
Just looking at Leinster's defence and how they're managing to keep their shape so well, and then when we look at Ireland during the Six Nations, they're cut out wide quite a few times. What is it that Leinster are managing to do better than maybe Ireland were able to do in terms of kind of keeping their discipline? Is it a discipline thing, or is it?
No, Ireland's discipline is outstanding. I think they're conceding ridiculously a number of penalties. A lot of teams playing against them are complaining that they're not being penalised more. So discipline isn't the problem. It's a very simple thing called spacing. Like if you look at, even against England, when you remember England were driving a maul one time and they took the ball out of the maul and they threw a pass to Farrell, who popped it to Teo, except he couldn't give it to. He pivoted back and he gave it to one of the second rows. I think it might have been Cruz, and then I think the ball was knocked out of Cruz's hand by Carberry, right? So the reason I go into that is the key is that Carberry is the outside centre. He's standing beside the maul, and the next guy beside him is Keith Earls. If you look at the picture, there's absolutely nobody on the Irish goal line. I don't even know where Rob Kearney is. I can't find him on the clip, the Irish defence can get narrow. It got really narrow, and if England had just made two passes, they'd have walked under the sticks. So they have been vulnerable. We saw them against Wales. They got caught. I think had Dan Biggar been on the pitch, he wouldn't have thrown that intercept at the very end of the game.
He would have gone to Tipperick out the back.
He would have gone out the back to Tipperick, and it was probably going to be pretty hairy. Because they'd already scored. Like Schindler scored a few minutes earlier. So it comes down to spacing. I mean, the number of times you freeze the Irish defence, you could drop a dustbin lid over 10 of them, because they're so complex around the ruck. And that's a problem. That does give the outside channels. And Leinster had that problem, as talked about, Lancaster talked about it there earlier in the year, but they seem to have found that balance. Ireland, not that good at it. They still conceded 3 tries in Twickenham.
It often, like, the errors out wide, like, obviously Earls and Stockdale get exposed and you go, oh, what a bad decision.
And they get the blame because they get left with an impossible decision. 3 guys running down your channel.
It's also worth pointing out that the pace of the game steps up when you go to test level. Suddenly you have to get back to your feet and you don't have that extra split second to maybe get a little bit of a
But the worrying thing for me, Murray, is that, like, Ireland haven't been really missing tackles. And they haven't been lazy. But they just get their compression wrong. Around
and
the
then you wonder,
breakdowns.
is it a system thing? Are they placing too much focus on not being broken in those areas? Because
you don't have to do that. You don't have to do that.
Yeah, but it's happened consistently where one pass takes out those 4
or 5 guys. I mean, that's fine if they go down that channel. But teams are looking at us going, well, why would you attack there? There's 4 defenders. Why don't you just throw 2 passes, one out the back, and you're going to get the corner? And then we've been caught like that consistently. Even Italy got 3 tries against us. So, like, I suppose when you win a Grand Slam, you can step back and go, look, everything was great. Everything really wasn't that great. We won a great Grand Slam, but my worry going to Twickenham was that defensively we look very frail. Now, the fact that we got 3 tries, they got 3 tries, but we kicked the conversions, they didn't, was the difference at the end of the day. They still got 3 tries in Twickenham.
One of those tries probably late on when
the game was over. But that English midfield isn't that locked up, because Eddie Jones is still toying with his midfield. He's not sure to play Farrell at 12 or Farrell at 10, Teo at 12, Teo at 13. That whole midfield is in a mix for him. He hasn't figured that out yet. So it's not the most potent midfield, and they still scored 3 tries.
And I mean, Leinster get benefits from that. They get so many knock-on effects from the Grand Slam. Those guys have been working hard on those things, and then they come into a big match like Sarries.
But I think Leinster's defence has improved.
Definitely
improved. We saw there, like, you looked as a wall of blue. And they've been very smart. They haven't. It's interesting that it was an area they were worried about earlier in the year. Now I think they're pretty comfortable with it. But they'll have to be against the Scarlets.
Yeah.
If they get narrow at all on Saturday for
Their
whatever
width is
reason,
incredible. They hold such
trouble
good width.
coming. Yeah.
Their shape, like they're so comfortable. They even move between shapes. They always have a flanker, either 15 metre.
Well, they
channel.
play in 1-3-3-1,
Yeah,
so there's
yeah.
always a forward presence on the outside channel. And as you say, if they get a turnover, they're just going to throw 2 passes and go. You know.
So yeah, biggest test yet for Leinster's D.
Top notch. Who's next?
Eddie, you mentioned at the outset that you thought there might be a negative to there being 2 Irish teams potentially in the final. I'm just wondering what that actually is.
Yeah.
What an unbelievable callback. I'd completely forgotten about that. At the time, I was like,
Good
I must
call.
remember that. Yeah.
The reason I say that is nothing to do with Ireland. It's the fact that I thought it was, like, as we know a few years ago, that the French and the English took over the European competition. They basically decided we're in charge of this and we're going to scale it back and we're going to reduce the numbers, and then you're going to have to qualify out of the Pro 14 or the Pro 12 to get in. So France and England have control of Europe. And after the quarter final, I think, Saracens hardly touched down in London. And they were out of the blocks again straight away, saying, well, we have to reduce the numbers again. They are like the Premiership rugby were out front and centre, saying we have to reduce the numbers, there's too many games. And my worry is that if for some reason we were to dominate Europe again, it was all about Ireland, they're inclined to go, well, you know what, we don't care that much about Europe. Now, the French have always been, as they say themselves, comme ci, comme ça about Europe. Depends on how it's going. If it's going well in for the top 14 or they might pitch up. If things are going badly in the top 14, they don't care what's going on in Europe. They just have to survive. Certain teams take Europe seriously, like Toulon, Racing Metro, obviously. But the French are very convincible. They could easily be swayed by the English. The English are looking at Europe going, is this really for us? Do we want to put all our energy into this? What's the upside? And then when Saracens come to Dublin and get sent packing, my worry is that France and England say, well, Europe's not that important anymore because we're not winning it anyway, and it's a pain in the backside. We've got to look after our own backyard, focus on the Premiership, make sure there's not too many games. All that narrative worries me, and that was pretty early out of the blocks after Saracens lost.
Yeah.
So if we had 2 Irish teams in the final of Europe and we're going for it and it's all about us, that's just a worry I have. It's a political thing, but it's something I wouldn't rule out as, because I've already fired a shot about it.
It's a tricky one for EBCR because when the Irish teams are doing well, they're doing well financially, and the competition is doing well in terms of people going to watch the games.
Yeah, because we have the best supporters in Europe.
They get
travel and we spend money and we get behind teams, But if you look at it from the other side, the Premiership is struggling. There's one team made money last year. Even Saracens have substantial debts on the back of their success. So they're all looking to how to recalibrate and make some money and stabilise their league. They're talking about eliminating promotion relegation. They're ring-fencing 14 teams, like holding them in there and just making the best of it. That all doesn't ring well for Europe, because Europe becomes a bit of a nuisance.
It's a worrying one to follow, right? Yeah.
Jesus, we can't end it like that. I mean, it's a great point, though, mind you. Who's next up? Got a couple here on this side of the room.
Yeah, regarding strength and depth, we've heard a lot the last number of years about Leinster. They've 3 players in each position. Just looking at Munster, in my opinion, they're missing 4 of their backs against Toulon. How well do you think Leinster and Munster have coped, and possibly Leinster coping without McGrath, Lowe, O'Brien? Well, definitely, we basically said this weekend. How impressed have you been with Munster and Leinster coping with their injuries this season?
I think Leinster are better equipped. I think they just have more players at the moment. Like Munster are a bit skinnier, and I think the key for the Toulon game was that they got Rory Scannell on the field, they got Conway on the field, they got Zebo on the field. Like, I think they would struggle without those guys more than Leinster. Leinster seem to have more strings in their bow, so I think Leinster have a little more depth. But having said that, I probably said this a couple of times earlier in the year, but I think Scannell is a phenomenal player. I mean, I just think he's hugely underrated. I thought he's a guy who's really, really got everything that you need, and I'd love to see him play more outside centre, because I think he's got that. I don't want to kind of put the hex on the guy, but there's something about him that reminds me of Driscoll, and his work rate, his energy, his passing skills, his toughness. He's a really good player, but he's key to Munster, I think, actually. If Munster were to lose him, I think things get very tricky for them, because I think he's at the heart of a lot of good things that happen at Munster. But I think there is good depth in Leinster, very good depth. Munster not so much. And I think if that were to happen to a couple of players like Zebo, and I think Zebo will be gone is very sad, because I think he's going to be very hard to replace. Again, he's one of these guys who's got the X factor. He can, like, it wouldn't surprise me. You saw that tip on pass, like, who does that? You know, he could be the guy on Saturday that unlocks Racing. You know, he'll do something ridiculous. He'll spin out of a tackle and he'll put someone away. So, like, he's going to be a big loss. But what will happen was we'll use him. You know.
Yeah, like, I think the depth in Leinster feels more proven, or feels less of a gap.
That's not a mystery, because just Leinster have more schools playing rugby, so they have much more options coming into the academy. There's more competition to get in. Like, yeah, Munster have some great schools, but they don't have the same numbers. It's a numbers game, and that's really the truth of it. It's not that Munster are doing that particularly bad. They just don't have the volume of talent that Leinster have.
Well, like, Scanlon's a good example of guys coming through the academy and now is an excellent player. It's just getting it more guys.
But even
like
if you
him.
look at the number of Leinster guys who are playing in the other provinces as well, that the overspill they're getting, like Jordy Murphy's gone off to Ulster, which is probably a smart move in terms of his career, in terms of playing. Like he could easily get squeezed out next year in Leinster. So, like, I think that's where the strength of Leinster is in their depth, and I think Munster aren't doing anything wrong. It's just that the numbers are in their
they're working hard. Like, a guy like Alex Wooden's doing pretty good when he's come in, and Calvin Nash.
He's kind of a late developer, because I remember 4 years ago he was playing with Gary Owen and he was kind of involved in the sevens, and he didn't look like he was going anywhere. I mean, to be honest with you, I mean, but like somebody flipped a switch, or he flipped a switch.
He got a chance. He got a run of games.
Yeah, and he just took it. You know, and even like last year, a guy like Ron O'Mahony was playing fantastic rugby, has been squeezed out. So there's a bit of competition there for sure. You know, and again, I think that goes back to my point about you're in a situation where if you get a chance, you better take it. Or someone else is going to take it off you. And that's we used to talk years ago. We used to talk about the All Blacks being like that. That if you got picked for the All Blacks, you never give up your shirt, because you might never get it back again.
Yeah.
It's getting like that with Ireland now.
Yeah,
in a lot of
it's
positions.
interesting. I'll see them RFU and Munster supplement. So like Byrne, now that can be a better avenue, getting those guys back into the game, and also the Irish qualified guys like Mike Haley is coming over, Addison's going up to Ulster. They're targeting those kind of players more as well. So anything to grow the depth is good really for Irish rugby. I know some people wouldn't maybe agree with guys who haven't grown up in our system or have played for England, Saxons coming over and trying to play for Ireland. But in a professional game, that's what they need to do.
I think it's straightforward. If you're entitled to a passport, you should be able to play. I think they are Irish. But I am happier that they have pushed it out to 5 years on the residency rule. I think that's probably about right. I think 3 years to me always didn't feel right. So I think that's fair. But having said that, you've got to use the regulations. But I still think that in the overall picture, we've never been in better shape in terms of depth in the country, and I think that's, to be fair, back to the strength of the schools game in Ireland and the academies starting to kind of really streamline their process and deliver guys at a very young age in great fettle, both skills wise and particularly strength and conditioning.
100%. Take a couple more before we wrap. There's 3 to go. We might make you the last 3 if that's all right, because you do have to get home at some point. Sorry.
On the depth of the squad, I suppose we do have good depth across most of our numbers, but we were talking about Conor Murray earlier, and the difference between that number 9 and the rest of our number 9s is so great. Do we think that they are putting things in place to prepare if he was to get injured?
I think that's a good question, but I think the reason is you're comparing whoever's second to Conor Murray, and you can take your pick. You're comparing the second to Conor Murray to the best scrum half in the world. He's like. The odds of us having a guy that could challenge him at the moment are pretty slim, because I don't think anyone could challenge him.
He's our best 9 ever.
He's the best 9 ever. He's the best 9 in the world. So the guy who's number 2 to him, whether you want to mix, whether it's Marmion or it's Luke McGrath, I think Cooney's had a great year up in Ulster. But to be fair to them, they're still on. But Conor is so far ahead of everybody. So will we find another Conor Murray? I don't know. I'd like to. But it's unlikely. So the next guy up is probably not going to be as good, but he'd still be a very good scrum half. I think you're not comparing the average guy with an average guy. He's exceptional.
I think on your point though, there does need to be an effort to get that guy a little bit closer. Luke McGrath was unlucky; he got injured after being on the bench for the first game.
Yeah,
and I think the Australia tour will be key for Carberry potentially at 10, and whichever of those scrum halves you decide is next in line to get exposure against a tier 1 nation in a huge.
I think the problem for Carberry still is the fact that he's behind Sexton and Leinster. Like if he's
Ross Byrne at times.
If he's well, I think he's ahead of Ross Byrne because of his experience, and Ross Byrne is a very good player. But I mean, I got a bit of stick for this, but Carberry, if he's our number 210, he does have to play the big games. He should be starting next Saturday. You know, with the club he's with. If the club is in a big game, he should be starting. The truth of the matter is he's behind Johnny, understandably so. But in terms of going to the World Cup in 18 months' time, if Johnny gets injured and he has to start a big quarter-final game, you know, where is he in that? That's not giving out about him. He's a fantastic player. But in terms of him being best prepared to step on the world stage and deliver under huge pressure, he probably needs to be playing at the top end week in, week out, and in these big games where, you know, there's no hiding place. You know, that's where he needs to hone his skills. And when he's behind Johnny, it's very hard for him to do that. The opportunities don't arise. There's no question that Carberry will start next weekend.
Yeah, I think that's the challenge for Schmidt. Just been depth everywhere else, and now just to get those guys a little bit closer.
Yeah.
Cool. We've got 2 more before we wrap.
Out of the current crop of young Irish players, is there anyone who stands out that could go on to be the next Brian O'Driscoll or Paul O'Connell, or a player of that sort of stature, I guess?
Well, now that you mentioned 2 of them, I think Carberry is in definitely what I've seen. He's in the same trajectory as O'Driscoll. You know, if he's lucky with injuries, I think James Ryan could be Paul O'Connell material as well. I do think that there's just what it strikes me about them, which struck me about O'Connell and O'Driscoll when they started, was that when they were seamless in their transition to the top end of the game, there was no hiccups, and they seemed comfortable when they took the big stage. Like Carberry, to me, has made limited number of mistakes, tiny number of mistakes in his big appearances. And I think Ryan, I watched him under 20s, I thought he was outstanding, and I was saying, well, can he make the step? You know, he made the step. So they're the 2 guys I think at the moment that you're looking down the track, and in World Cup 23 they could be your 2 key guys. You know,
I think even looking back a little bit further, 20s crop at the moment, the guy who didn't play in the Six Nations was Caelan Doris, who's an exceptional prospect at number 8. He'll be back for the World Cup. He actually made his comeback.
Deegan's
recently.
been outstanding as well this year.
Yeah, he has been. You know. Another under-20s guy, Angus Curtis, who's slightly underrated up in Ulster.
Know his dad well.
Came from of course.
His dad played for Ireland back in the 91 World Cup. Yeah, he played for Connacht as well.
Yeah. So there's a couple other guys on those underage teams, even 19s level. There's a couple, and Jack O'Sullivan from Munster did really well in Doris's absence. So there is a nice pipeline of guys coming through there as well.
Absolutely. One more.
The back there,
gentleman down the back.
You touched on it there about Carberry getting more game time. There's talks of the RFU working to get him into Munster or Ulster. Do you think it'd be a good move for him? And if so, which province would be better for him?
I think the provinces are pushing that a bit more. I think Munster especially have made the point that he could get a little bit more game time potentially down there, and Ulster obviously as well now need a 10. So
yeah, it depends on where one wants to see. Like I think Keighley has done very well, but Blendall has been injured, and Blendall probably in some ways might have been there. They would have seen the guy who would have led the charge this year, but he got injured and Keighley stepped up. So there's options there for him, but it's not. I think if he goes, it'd be good for him to stay in Ireland, because if he goes outside Ireland, the policy they have, he wouldn't be able to play for Ireland. The unofficial policy, as Ian Madigan found out. But who's another fantastic player, who I think is an excellent 10. But having said that, yeah, it doesn't matter really wherever he goes. It doesn't really matter once he's playing every week. That's the key. It's not about he'd be better off here or there. He'd be better off playing rugby every week, and kind of honing his skills under pressure.
Yeah, the issue is that he hasn't wanted to move. He wants to stay in Leinster where he's grown up. Yeah, it is. It's easier for us to say that, but he would have to move his life and whatever.
Well, you know, I mean, some people move around the world to get a job.
Yeah,
you know,
that's true.
Moving to Belfast or to Galway or to Cork or Limerick isn't the end of the world, you know.
And his scale of talent is it has to be.
Motorways are working pretty well.
He's a Kildare
and the
man
fact
anyway,
that a
isn't
couple
he?
of Leinster guys are now moving there with Jordy Murphy obviously making the move is going to be a brilliant signing. For me, it would make more sense if he did go to Ulster, especially with the gap in their squad there. So he just needs to play bigger games all the time, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thanks a million for your questions. We'll get your predictions then, guys, for the weekend, and then we'll pick a winner for the jersey. I have all the questions logged here, so our memories won't be tested too harshly. We'll start with Leinster then, at home to the Scarlets. Murray, what do you reckon?
Yeah, I think Leinster, for the reasons we've mentioned, they've improved. They're a more complete force. I think they'll win by a try. I think they have enough scoring ability, and their defence has been really good. So, yeah, I think Leinster will be in that final.
Eddie?
I'll make it easy for you. Be an All-Ireland final.
Oh. Disaster for Europe, but glory for Ireland.
It's out of my control.
The Brexiteers will be going mad.
But I think I agree with Murray. I think, Leinster, it's been put up to them, but it's been put up to them all year. They've done it. And I think Munster, I have a sneaking feeling about Munster. They're not favourites, but I just, in these situations, I wouldn't back against them.
Class. Well, we'll pick a winner for the Leinster jersey. Oh my God, there were a lot of questions, but they were really good questions. Will Tyke Byrne fit in for Ireland? Have Leinster and Munster already beaten the next best teams in the competition in knocking out Sarries and Toulon? Would a fit Jamie Heaslip get into the Leinster squad? Why are Leinster better at keeping defensive shape than Ireland? What's the negative to an All-Irish final? That was a really good callback. How impressed have you been?
That's the question.
That's the question.
That's the one.
We don't even need to go any further.
No.
Okay, well there you
Very
go.
strategic question.
It saved our
Thinking
bacon anyway, for
outside
sure.
the box.
It was good.
Yeah.
Fair play. It was the woman in the back there. Will we do that? We'll give it to you in a second. Is that right? Perfect. Yeah. Lads, thanks a million for coming. Really appreciate it. Just want to thank our sponsors again, Bank of Ireland, and they'll be having the Irish Heart Foundation on Leinster's jersey for a Pro 14 game coming up soon. Oh wow! Oh, I didn't see that in advance. Now I have to say, fantastic.
I'm not in that hall anymore. That's embarrassing. I was asked to leave that hall.
But while it's there, our thanks. Our sincere thanks to Eastside Tavern as well for the use of the hall. And look, hope you enjoyed it. Enjoy the weekend, more importantly. Have a good one, and thanks a million for coming. All the best. Cheers.